Good evening. Mitt Romney and Kerry Healy are in their second full day as the official nominees on the Republican ticket for governor and lieutenant governor. Romney, of course, won in a landslide Tuesday with no opposition. But Kerry Healy was the big surprise, whopping opposition candidate Jim Rappaport, almost 2-1. And Mitt Romney is here. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We were so hoping Kerry Healy would be here also. I know at the last minute there was a lot of scrambling around, but we're very pleased to have you.
Well, thank you. She's out at a rally, I understand,
I know.
So a lot of excitement.
A little confusion at the last minute there whether she'd actually make it. Anyway, so already two have come out of the box. You've got these very positive advertisements running on television about education and English immersion. But Kerry Healy's already nipping at the heels of Shannon O'Brien. You guys doing sort of a good cop, bad cop thing, or what?
Oh, it's pretty early in the campaign. I did learn something, however, in 1994 when I ran against Senator Kennedy, and that is if you don't define yourself, your opponent will do that for you. So my ads are designed to let people know some of the things I believe about education, about the big dig, about job creation. We're going to lay out a whole series of ads that talk about what I believe in. And, of course, I also learned that if fired upon, you return fire.
You know, I was going to ask you much later in the conversation about that, about what you learned. You were really very strong. You were neck and neck with Senator Kennedy for the longest time. What do you think was your weakest point? Was it the actual debates where you fell apart? What was it?
Well, I think I just wasn't well enough known by the people in Massachusetts, and therefore the senator was wisely able to characterize me in a way that was far from what I really was and what I was getting into the race for. But because people didn't know me and I hadn't really been out and explained my views, it was something that I had a hard time shaking. So this time I'm in there to make sure people know what I stand for, why I'm in the race.
Well, how are you going to do that? You've already said that you want to only participate in 3 debates. One, which is really going to be shown in Western Massachusetts, although we're going to pick it up here next Tuesday night at 7, and one consortium debate and one with the Herald and Channel 7. Why not do one a week, as Shannon O'Brien has suggested? Let the people get to know you. That's really the best way.
Well, I've looked at what they do in the presidential race, and it seems that the presidents are able to have 3 debates and make it work. And then in the history of Massachusetts, the gubernatorial races have typically had 2. I'm moving to 3, which is what Harshbarger and Cellucci did. I think that gives us enough time to really get prepared and allow us to also spend our time out on the campaign trail. I want to be out shaking hands, talking to people at rallies, contacting as many people as I can. It's not just a TV campaign.
I know, but look, you know, this whole debate thing is a big game. I worked very closely with the Presidential Commission on Debates when I was at Fox and ABC, and it's always the front runner, or the person who wants to position themselves as the front runner, or the incumbent who doesn't want to have the debates.
Yeah,
and is that part of your game here?
Well, Senator Kennedy only wanted 1 debate, and I think
he wouldn't have any.
I think we pushed him to 2.
With Jackie Robinson.
I wanted 3, and at this stage, we're basically taking the precedent from the prior campaigns, which is 3 debates is what's been happening in gubernatorial races. It's the same thing in the presidential race, and it seems to be a pretty good model for letting people know you by TV, and then a lot more are going to get to know me by shaking hands.
And many more probably by your advertisements.
And advertising is a big piece of campaigns. It's amazing.
It is.
I had not realized by how much I would be outspent in this campaign, but it's pretty clear that in the last 6 or 7 weeks that my opponents are going to spend a lot more money than we can, and their allies. And the combination means that I'm going to have to be pretty effective in what I do spend.
You can't argue with its effectiveness, though. I mean, look what you basically did for Kerry Healy. And I know you have a lot of other sentiments about that, but it was largely your advertising campaign and your appeal directly to your constituents that said, don't mess this up, this is the person I want. That worked.
No, I think that works. I think it also worked to have her speak to the camera and tell people why she was running, because there was a lot of misinformation out there, and by her picking up that microphone both on radio and on camera and letting people know what she was going to do if she were lieutenant governor, that makes a big difference, and people just swarmed to her campaign.
Both you and Shannon O'Brien have picked up on this kind of fear and smear, or smear and fear, depending on who says it, idea. I think maybe you started it, saying that everything that she says is fear and fear against you and vice versa. But if you say that every time you're challenged by something or every time you're criticized, doesn't it kind of water down the accusation that it's fear and smear? Not everything is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I used it first. I was surprised that she's going to pick up on it.
Oh, sure.
Well,
nothing better than stealing a good idea.
Exactly. Well, you know, when I announced that I was getting in the race, the Democratic Party began an effort, as you know, to try and see if they couldn't knock me off the ballot on a residency basis, and that was thrown out by the Ballot Law Commission.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
And it was from that a series of ads came out from the Democratic Party that were just awful on me, and I was convinced that this was what the whole campaign was going to be like. Well, we'll see where it goes. But, you know, part of this sport is, you know, having a tough, enough skin to handle some whacks here and there. That's going to happen. It's a tough sport being in politics in Massachusetts. I'm a big boy. I can handle it.
Mm-hmm. You've sort of tried to distance yourself from the Republican Party in a sense. You said that the only connection you have with them is that you're a registered Republican. That's what you said to Judy Woodruff on CNN yesterday. But the Republican Party has helped you with some advertising. You've got some aides, some very fine aides that came over from the Joe Malone's administration. You've got the backing of former Governor Weld, Cellucci, Swift, Senator McCain. Weld was campaigning for you today. It sure sounds like, you know, connections to the Republican Party to me.
Well, surely I have many friends who are Republicans and Republican voters, and I'm in the Republican primary, of course. But what I was referring to is, am I part of the establishment that's been managing the state or been managing the governor's office over the last decade or so? And the answer is, of course not. I've been in the private sector. I was actually out in Utah for 3 years running the Olympic Games, and I'm proud to be able to put myself forward as a person of independence. I don't think people vote for people they know based on their party affiliation. They instead look and say, is this a person who's going to make my life better and make my future better? And that's why I'm running. I'm not running as the Republican view or a continuation of Republican values. That's not what brings me to the race. I'm running, and as you know, I looked at a primary against and was planning on a primary against the Republican incumbent. I was looking to bring in a new perspective, an outside perspective to the way things are done in Beacon Hill. And if people want change, and if they want a different way of business being done in Massachusetts, they're going to support me.
Okay, but if that's true, that people look at a candidate individual, I'm not sure that's so true in Massachusetts, by the way, as, you know, an individual rather than a party, why then do you feel kind of the need to push away the past administrations? Why, you're not one of them. The party here is so small anyway. Why not embrace them?
Well, you know, it's not that you want to push away, but you want to define yourself based on who you are, rather than having someone say, oh, because you're Republican, that means you support everything every Republican has done. Well, that's not true for a Republican or for a Democrat. I am who I am, and I'll define how I'm going to do things. And I do things differently than Bill Weld, Paul Cellucci, and Jane Swift in certain ways. In other ways, I'd probably try and learn from them. Bill Weld faced a real tough budget crisis when he came in as governor. He didn't raise taxes to solve the crisis. He instead went after state bureaucracy. That's a pretty good model. But it doesn't mean that everything I'm going to do is going to follow the same path as people that happen to be in the same party.
You and Senator O'Brien actually agree, no surprise really, I mean, on certain things. You're both moderate on certain positions, civil unions, the minimum wage issue, the indexing for the minimum wage, and a few things like that. You differ slightly on the bilingual ed. She supports continuing bilingual education in schools. You want to do English immersion, but what's going to be the big defining difference between the two of you, do you think?
I think that the defining difference is going to be the perspective that we bring to Beacon Hill. Shannon O'Brien has been there for her career, and she has established the favors and political IOUs that are associated with being on Beacon Hill and being linked to lobbyists, as she has been over these almost a decade. It's different. It's different. We have a lot of people. We have 200 legislators who've been on Beacon Hill, who have lobbyist connections and ties and experience in Beacon Hill. Would it be useful to have someone who comes in with an outside perspective? Someone who says, I know how to solve a budget problem without raising taxes. I know how to make government more efficient. That's the experience I bring. I was at the Olympics for 3 years. We cut our budget by $200 million. We raised revenue from the federal government. We raised sponsorships. I can do things that someone who's been on Beacon Hill all their career can't do. And I'm not saying you don't want to have someone who hasn't got experience on Beacon Hill, but we've already got hundreds of them. Let's try one person who's got experience from another venue and see if I can't bring a level of leadership that makes a difference for all the people of the Commonwealth and not just for the politicians.
You've been on some very high stages. You ran for Senate. You came as close as anyone has to beating Senator Kennedy. You ran the Olympics. Why do you want the governor's office?
It's not for me. I have to be very honest, and that is that I want to make a difference for the working families of Massachusetts. I have gained some enormous experience during my life and had some great perspectives that I've been provided through my career and experience. I want to provide that experience for the people of the Commonwealth. I love Massachusetts. I've loved living here. I've raised 5 sons here. I've got 4 grandkids that are now growing up in Massachusetts. We can do a lot better job in our schools than we're doing. We can balance our budget without raising taxes. We can bring more jobs to Massachusetts. I can call on virtually any company in America and meet with chief executives and sell them on Massachusetts. No one else in Beacon Hill can do that. I want to bring whatever I can to help Massachusetts.
The big fear is that you won't stay. You've got, you know, your eyes on a bigger horizon, and the last 2 administrations left, and the final one sort of fell apart, that when that phone call comes, you'll be too tempted, you'll have to go.
Yeah, I can tell
Convince us that won't happen.
I can tell you what it's going to go like. All right, the phone call comes. First of all, it's never going to come.
Mr. Romney,
it's
hold
never
for
gonna
the
come.
president, hold for the White House.
Yes, hello, Mr. President. Yes, I'll send my taxes right away. No, you'd like me to do what? Thank you very much, but I've just worked tirelessly and invested my energy and my funds to get elected as governor of Massachusetts. I've made a commitment and a promise to the people of Massachusetts. I'll be here all 4 years. I'm sorry, Mr. President. No matter what you got in mind, I'm here
You weren't even going to let him tell you?
all 4 years. Now, if I get drafted, I don't know what I could, to go into the military,
Yeah.
but no, I'm here all 4 years, and there's no if, and, or but about it.
All right, Mitt Romney, we look forward to seeing you as part of the debates throughout the season. Thanks so much for coming.
Good to be here.
All right, and when we continue, Mitchell Garabedian settles with the Archdiocese for 86 victims of John Gagin.